Walk into a mall that had a Seiko dealer 2 years ago, and there is a decent chance it's gone. In its place, you might find a phone case kiosk, a generic jewelry chain, or just a stretch of empty storefront with old fixtures still bolted to the floor. To the casual observer, it looks like a brand in a death spiral. But if you look at the company's 2026 financials, you don't see a dying brand. You see a profit machine that just cleared a 50% jump in earnings. What's actually happening? There is something crazy going on with Seiko, and if you're still looking at them through the lens of a value brand, you are missing the biggest shift in watch history. The hundreds of store closures circulating on forums are real. Over the last 2 years, Seiko has ended partnerships with a massive volume of third-party retail accounts. We are talking about the mid-tier department stores and mall jewelers that once carried full Seiko displays alongside brands like Fossil and Citizen. But here is what people keep getting wrong. Seiko didn't lose those accounts. They ended them? Usually, a brand losing distribution is a brand in trouble. Retailers walk when the product doesn't move. But the 2026 filings show a deliberate move towards Seiko watch salons and premium luxury environments. They are choosing to leave certain channels, not being pushed out of them. Picture a typical mall display. A glass case under fluorescent lighting holds 30 watches on a spinning rack next to a 30% off sign. A customer picks up a Seiko 5 GMT, then chooses a Michael Kors chronograph because the box is shinier. Seiko looked at that and decided they were done. Not because they couldn't compete on price, but because they couldn't compete on presentation in an environment they didn't control. The authorized dealer relationships being wound down are overwhelmingly with accounts that couldn't or wouldn't meet a new set of standards. Staff training, minimum display requirements, and the forced separation of Grand Seiko into its own room. Smaller stores decided it wasn't worth the investment. Some lost authorization, some handed it back. Either way, the shelf is empty. To understand what is happening, you first have to understand what Seiko actually is in 2026. Calling it one brand is like calling New York City one neighborhood. Technically accurate, but functionally misleading. Most people think of Seiko as a company that makes everything from a $70 quartz to a $15,000 movement. The operational reality is a three-tier structure pulling itself apart. Each tier is chasing a different customer. Grand Seiko is no longer behaving like a sub-brand. At Watches and Wonders 2026, it had its own separate presence and booth, completely distinct from the parent group. Grand Seiko is now positioning itself against Patek Philippe in finishing and A. Lange and Sona in storytelling. References that were bold at $4,000 3 years ago are now anchoring collections at $12,000. Their Zaratsu polishing and nature-inspired dials are genuinely different from anything out of Switzerland. Then there is Credor, the ultra-high-end line featuring enamel dials and minute repeaters. It exists in a world of private boutiques and waiting lists, and that world is becoming more defined every day. That leaves the main Seiko brand, the Seiko 5 and Prospex lines that built a generation of watch enthusiasm. This tier is being asked to do something uncomfortable. It has to hold on to customers who love it for being affordable while supporting the upward price moves the luxury strategy requires. The Seiko 5 GMT is impressive, but the collector who bought an SKX for $180 in 2017 doesn't run that comparison. In his math, Seiko doubled its prices while its attention moved elsewhere. He's not wrong about the price, but he's wrong about what it means for the brand's future. There is a version of this story that never gets told online. Think about the 20-year-old who bought a Seiko 5 as his first mechanical watch. 3 years later, he buys a used Grand Seiko Snowflake. When he puts it on his wrist, something shifts. He realizes the brand whose entry level taught him how to think about watches is capable of this level of artistry. He is exactly the customer the long game is designed to grow. The Seiko 5 didn't lose him. It built him. That narrative doesn't trend online. The thread titled, "My dealer lost authorization and I'm devastated," gets 1,000 replies. The thread titled, "The pipeline finally converted me," gets 40. The reason this story has teeth is because the money is moving online. For most of the 20th century, the dealer was the relationship. They knew your name and your wrist size. That model is over. Seiko is moving its most desirable product through its own digital channels and boutiques. A third-party dealer selling an $8,000 Grand Seiko takes a 30 to 40% cut. But Seiko's own online boutique keeps 100% of it. On a high-end piece, the difference is thousands of dollars per transaction. The deeper reason isn't the margin, it's the data. When a customer buys from a dealer, Seiko learns a watch was sold. That's it. When that same customer buys directly, Seiko knows who they are, what they searched, and what they're likely to buy next. That information is the foundation of a direct collector relationship, the same kind Rolex and Patek have cultivated for generations. All three brands went through versions of the same dealer friction Seiko is experiencing now. All three came out with stronger communities. Ending these relationships is not costless. There are real people on the wrong end of these decisions. Jewelers who have carried Seiko for 30 years, and families who bought their first watches at those counters. But Seiko isn't running a sentimental operation, they are running a strategic one. The dealers surviving are the ones who invested when asked. The ones who said we shouldn't have to change are losing authorization. Here is the number that should stop the collapse narrative. Net profit for fiscal year 2026 is projected up nearly 50%. This doesn't fit the story of a brand in decline. Think of Seiko's lineup as a triangle. At the base are millions of Seiko 5s. The volume is enormous, but the margin is thin and complexity is high. At the apex are Grand Seiko and Creedor pieces that net more in a single sale than 100 entry-level transactions. Seiko has decided that the small percentage of their base spending 5 figures is responsible for the majority of their profit. Cutting low-margin distribution while growing the high-margin tier is what produces that profit jump. This strategy isn't new. Burberry ran this calculation years ago when they cut mass-market products to rebuild as a powerhouse. Both brands absorbed years of dying coverage that looks comically wrong today. The difference is that a Seiko 5 isn't just a cheap watch, it's a legitimately excellent mechanical tool. Seiko isn't abandoning a weak lower tier, they are abandoning a strong one in favor of a higher margin tier that is also elite. The restructuring is still in process, which means the friction is ongoing. The forums and longtime enthusiasts who feel abandoned aren't entirely wrong. Seiko in 2026 is genuinely more interested in the collector spending $10,000 than the enthusiast wanting a $300 diver. The brand can theoretically serve both, but when resources are finite, the choice being made is visible. The woman who has worn a Seiko 5 for years and found her local display case empty last month is a real casualty. She might go to Tissot, or she might never buy another watch again. Seiko isn't closing stores because it's failing. They are closing stores because those stores were selling a version of Seiko that the company is done being. Depending on who you are, there are 2 ways to feel about that. The Grand Seiko collector with a new boutique nearby is having a great year. The person who bought from the same counter since 1999 is feeling the sting. Same brand, 2 different worlds. The watch world was built on the accessible tool watch, and Seiko was king. But as the mall cases go dark and boutique lights turn on, it's clear the king has found a new throne, and it might be one that a lot of us can no longer reach. So, which side are you on? Are you still a believer in the value king, or have you moved on to the luxury era? Let me know in the comments. I want to know if the mall Seiko is something you're actually going to miss. The era of the $200 giant might be ending, but the story of Seiko's transformation is just getting started. Some will see it as a betrayal of their roots, while others see it as a brand finally realizing its true potential. The landscape of watch collecting has changed forever, and your local mall might never be the same again. It's a high-stakes gamble on the future of luxury, and only time will tell if Seiko's new direction will lead them to the top of the mountain or leave a generation of fans behind in the dust. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the shifting world of watchmaking, make sure to hit that like button. It helps the algorithm find other collectors who need to hear this story. Seiko is clearly moving into a new era, trading its mass-market past for a high-luxury future. But, as we've seen, every transformation has a cost, and for many of us, that cost is the accessible brand we grew up with. Whether you're staying for the luxury or moving on to the next value king, one thing is certain: the industry will never look the same again. For more deep dives into the hidden strategies and untold histories behind the world's most iconic brands, subscribe to Golden Stories. We don't just look at the products, we look at the power moves that change the game. Check out our other videos on the screen now to keep the story going. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.